Yeah, very happy to see the commitment so far. So I think the sittings and walking meditation are being done continuously, and this very good progress. So really happy to see that. Just a quick reminder before we get started on today's topic, right? So the main thing here is trying to understand and make friends with our mind. So no matter what happens in our mind, what comes up, we don't have to judge ourselves. We don't have to get annoyed with whatever comes up, right? What we want to do is to learn how it came up, how our attention went towards that, and how that shaped the next experience of our life, right? So what happened next and how that was shaped by the fact that our attention followed that. So just remember that it's very useful to continuously remind oneself of that, right? So often one feels, because we are so goal oriented and task oriented, right? So one can get into the pitfall of feeling like the task is to achieve a certain type of timing in my meditation sitting, or a certain duration when my mind doesn't get distracted. That is absolutely not what we need to do. Those are outcomes that come as we proceed, and we are starting with our unique mind, right? So our mind is unique, as well as the context every day, every moment is different. So whenever you're sitting, what happened preceding that, what things happened in your life that led to different thought processes coming up, right? So you're not in control of that. What you can do is actually see how your attention engages with it and develop skill with mind and attention. So that's got to be the priority. So just wanted to give a reminder of that, because we tend to, like I said, not only be goal oriented, but also to judge ourselves based on how we are hitting certain goals. Okay, so trust the process. Great. So thanks for filling in the forms. I won't be repeating this again, but this is something that needs to be done every day so that I can give the right input every day for your practice, right? Tomorrow again, we'll have the morning meditation. I think we'll be joined by some of the past retreaters as well. So we're doing like a little habit building challenge from time to time. We try need to pick up our practice, because life happens. So that's one of those things that will be new in the morning. Okay. And just a reminder, the active meditation is a very important part, right? So one of the things that I mentioned right in the beginning is that this practice is not meant to be an escape from life, where for a certain period of time we feel a certain way, or we have balance with our mind or better skills with our mind. What we want is for all these skills to become part of our broader life, our regular daily life, right? And active meditation is a great way to do that. So staying with your object while you're doing something which is not mentally very taxing, that is very useful. And you can identify different times in the day, right? So if you're having a transit, some kind of a metro ride, cab ride that is happening, you're doing something mundane around the house, you're going for a walk, whatever it is, that is an opportunity to do active meditation. What happens then is our mind, we start to be more mindful about how our attention is moving in a more chaotic, more regular situation which we are going to be experiencing for a large part of our life, right? So that's the other thing I just wanted to mention. Finally, the next live talk will be on Wednesday, so that'll be a interesting talk. I'll be reading a sutta. So it's a kind of transcript of one of the Buddha's talks, right? And on Wednesday evening, so I just give you a heads up that you should plan to have a sitting right after the talk. So those talks were designed for the oral tradition. Just the act of listening to them, creates a certain openness of mind, a certain openness to new ideas that are different from what we have experienced all our lives, right? And after listening to a talk like that, practicing can be quite beneficial, right? So that's the other thing I just wanted to remind you about. Okay, so I have mentioned craving I have mentioned tension and tightness and the relaxed step a bunch of times so far in the retreat, right? So today we'll be diving deep into craving, okay? And just to take off from the example that we used from the previous talk, so what we'll do is we'll just kind of build up our movement from one attentional object to the next, right? So let me share my screen and we'll start from there. Okay, so we discussed that our life's experience is a sequence of our attention moving from one thing to another. Two things we discussed about this. If something doesn't lie or occupy our attention, it does not exist in our experience of life at that period of time, right? And our attention may not continue to be placed in a topic or in an activity that we intend it to be placed in. So it can wander without our intending it to do, right? So understanding how our attention moves from one thing to another, this one attentional movement is kind of the building block of your life's experience. How you experience life is just a sequence of this repeating again and again. So we are diving deep into this, understanding what happens in one movement, because that gives us insights into how any experience of life is formed. And once we have covered this entire movement, you can literally use this understanding to analyze, reflect on, or to change your own behavior in any situation in life. So this will be very useful. We'll be building further on it even after today's talk, right? So with that as the context, let's start with how this movement starts, right? So if you have ever heard or read Newton's laws of motion, right? So the first law says that object retains its inertia, right? So if a ball is at rest, it will stay at rest unless something comes and moves it. If a ball is moving at a constant speed, it will move at that speed unless there is some force acting upon it, right? So our attention moves because something happens in our experience, right? Something has to change for our attention to move. And where does this begin? This begins at one of the sense channels. So any our window to the world, our window of experience is regulated through these six sense bases that we discussed: the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind. So some thought can come in your mind and it can change the course of your experience. It can change the course of your attention as well. So any attentional movement is starting with some activity that is happening here. We started with the example yesterday. So of a person who is busy with thinking about some important presentation that they have to do the next day, and they're walking down the street and suddenly there is a contact that happens at one of the sense spaces. So what is contact? It is the coming together of your sense space, some information that is uh, relevant to that sense space. So in this case, the sense space is the nose. The information is the smell that is coming from the bakery shop, right? So that is coming. And the third thing is your information processing ability, your ability to make sense of smell. That needs to be activated for you to be able to experience this, right? So this is the first thing that is happening. Currently you were in a certain attention bubble, the person in question was in a certain attention bubble, and suddenly this contact is the beginning of a journey that the person is taking. As soon as contact happens, the next thing that happens is a feeling or a sensation, right? So according to your own conditioning, right? So depending on what you like or don't like, if you have an extremely sweet tooth, then the smell of the bakery might have a different sensation for you, right? If you have very great memories of eating at that bakery, it might create a different sensation for you, right? So a sensation comes up that which can be pleasant or unpleasant. It can be anywhere on the spectrum. So it depends also. If you're very full, for instance, you may not have the same sensation versus if you're very hungry. So sensation happens. There are a lot of contacts that are happening even now. For example, as I'm talking to you, there are a lot of contacts that are happening in my ecosystem, right? So there is obviously the images that I can see. There are some crickets chirping in the background. I'm sitting on a seat. there's a mix of ambient room smells that is around me, right? So a lot of contacts are happening, and sensation is essentially starting to say what are the contacts that are happening that we think are very advantages or disadvantages, right? So if it was something repulsive smelling, you might also react to that because you want to kind of move from there quickly, or at least figure out why something is smelling bad and take care of it, right? So sensation is very important. All contacts are creating sensation, and the stronger the sensation, the more likely that it's going to take away your attention. Now, based on all of the sensation, how do you choose what your attention goes towards? So this is a very important step. This is the step that we call craving, and this is one of the critical things that happens when our attention moves from the object A to object B, from that person who's thinking about their presentation to going on and, you know, having an internal debate of whether to have a pie or not, right? So whatever happens next, right? So craving attaches your attention to this sensation. Let's investigate what's happening behind this sensation, what's happening behind this contact, and see if we need to take some action. Craving also makes it personal. It says that I like it or I don't like it. So far, whatever was happening was a impersonal thing, right? So you're walking around, lots of contacts are happening, and your attention is not going to all of those things. So right now, I'm sitting, I'm not paying attention to the sounds of the crickets around me, right? So I'm paying attention to what is happening right now. So craving attaches your attention to something with a flavor of I like it or I don't like it, right? And in this case, it is also highly driven by your conditioning. So if the person was indifferent to pies, then their craving may not kick in that I like this or I don't like this. If the person was extremely full to the point of bursting, craving might not kick in. Craving kicks in and says, now the next thing that we do, now our agenda is this. Our agenda earlier was thinking about our presentation. Our agenda now is thinking about this pie. So it is changing the agenda, it is making it about you, and it is starting to take your attention away completely from whatever you're busy doing to this new topic, right? So let me just kind of sum what we're talking about. So craving is the very beginning of I. So far, you could have seen that this is just an event that one is walking down, and there are multiple things. There is a pavement down below my feet. There's a bakery, there's an apparel shop, multiple things are there, right? Instead of that, it says now I want to have some pie, right? So it's the very beginning of I in this entire process of attention moving. And craving is always, again, like your sensations, right? It is trying to guide your next action. It always comes with a flavor of I like or I dislike. I want more of this in my life, or I don't want more of this in my life, right? So it says, so what happens is craving also starts creating for the first time a friction with reality. So you're getting certain signals from reality. Reality, the status quo is in a certain way. And craving says, I just want one thing changed, right? I want the world to be as it is, but with me having pie in my belly, right? So it says that I just want this thing, and now I'm completely attached to that thing. So craving makes it about I. And once things happen about I, that takes the utmost importance. Whatever takes over your identity at a certain point of time, that becomes most important, right? So take the example of driving down a road and suddenly someone honks and drives rashly around you. So you don't go deciding, when you start to go on the road, when you start to drive or ride in a cab, you don't decide that the first time somebody honks at me, I'm going to absolutely lose my balance. I'm going to go absolutely crazy about it, right? So you don't decide that. Even when that horn comes, you don't say, okay, now the best reaction for me is to become absolutely crazy. But when the story is no longer that somebody honked at me, the story is I like it or I dislike it. Your ability to stay even tempered or balanced completely goes out of the window. So now if I like it, I want it, till I don't get it, I'm going to be unhappy. And if I dislike it, I want it out of my life, till it's out of my life, I'm going to be unhappy. So craving is like a tantrum throwing child, or a slave driving boss who's never happy with whatever you do. As soon as you satisfy one craving, it will find the next target for craving. So I like this, okay, I dislike this, so you shout at that person. Okay, so now I next thing I do is I dislike the people of this city because they all drive like this. So now I can't do anything about it, I can't make any change to that. So now I'll continue to be frustrated because the world is not the way I want it to be, right? So it gets attached, right? It completely gets attached to that like or dislike. And the same thing, I want, don't want, that kind of flavor, or I wish my life would be like this, or I fear my life may become like this, right? So you may have fears about the future, or you may have regrets about the past. I wish things had happened differently. So the world is in a certain way, history has happened in a certain way, but now you're wishing that it was not that way, right? And as long as it's not the way you wanted it to be, your past, you're going to be unhappy. So that sounds like a very losing strategy to me, right? And the same way, I fear something may happen in the future. As long as nobody gives me like 100% foolproof guarantee that this will not happen, I'm going to be unhappy because the world is not as exactly as I wanted. So that's what craving does. Craving makes us small. It makes us completely attached to an outcome. Or unless this outcome happens, I'm not going to be happy, even if the outcome is in the past or in the future on which you have no agency. It is the beginning of taking things personally, right? So till uh, as we mentioned, the person walking on the road, they are getting a lot of contacts, right? So maybe there is a dog barking, maybe there are other people walking around them, maybe somebody bumped into them, maybe they saw a shop with a lot of say shirts or something like that. And there was also this bakery from which the smell was coming. But the person didn't start thinking, taking the other things personally, because the craving was directed towards the pie at that point of time. It became like, I'm hungry, or, maybe I'm putting on too much weight, I shouldn't eat it, but I want to eat it, I deserve to eat it, I've worked very hard today, or I'll eat it today and I won't eat anything sweet for the rest of the week. So the this kind of thought process kicks in, and the person completely gets transported from the earlier universe where they're thinking about important tasks to complete tomorrow, and now they're completely caught up with this craving, attached with this craving. Reflects the degree of attachment, right? So out of the multiple things, why is it that the person's attention went to this thing, right? So somebody so different people have different tendencies, right? Someone may walk into a room, right, and one person may be irritated about the level of disorder in the room. Things are thrown about, strewn about, right? That is the first thing that comes to their mind. Another person may come in and they may see that there's a 56-inch TV and they're completely delighted. Wow, I get to watch a 56-inch TV in this, say, hotel or whatever, right? So, whatever you're attached to affects where your craving lies, where craving arises for different things, right? So it's a reflection of the degree of attachment you have to certain things, and this may change over time as well. So at any point of time, if there is craving with something, it is reflecting the degree of attachment you have at that point of time. This is always accompanied by tightness in the mind and body. So why do I keep talking about relax? Why do I keep talking about tightness? Because craving, the more craving that you have, so if you have a complete shouting match with someone, right, you will find that there is this intense tightness in your mind to the point that it can give you a headache. Or if you've been obsessing about something, it might get to the point where it just hurts your mind. Some normally a lot of people, after a fight, they'll keep obsessing argument, they'll keep obsessing over things till their mind just becomes extremely exhausted and just gives up, right? And which is followed either by tears or sleep often, for a lot of people. So this tightness, till it is there, it will make sure you don't forget this thing, you keep going back to this topic, right? It doesn't give you an exit. And I have a interesting visual prop to give you a sense of that. We'll get to that in a moment. And the best way out of craving, right? So instead of, so how do you go from, why did this person honked, I don't like it, I want to just hurt them somehow using either my words or my actions. I'm absolutely irritated why this person did this, right? So how do you get out of that loop? So 6 hours is the way, right? So you recognize that your mind is attached with tension. So just the act of recognizing starts to depersonalize it. So story that is revolving in your mind is completely about I don't like it, or how dare this person, I don't like it, right? The underlying flavor is I don't like it. First, you recognize that attention is caught up with a certain thought process. That is the first step of understanding this is not I, but this is actually my attention getting gripped based on craving with a thought process. When you let it be, you're saying that okay, this is not the only way to function, right? So one can function without craving also. You're saying that okay, I don't need to be caught up in this thought process. I may need to take action on it, but I don't need to be caught up in it with craving. So that is the second thing that you're understanding. When you do the relaxed step and you're diffusing the tightness, it has a feedback loop back to the craving. So craving causes tightness and tightness causes craving, right? There is always a feedback loop that is happening between our mind and body. There is an interesting topic that we'll cover, and already so when we smile, for instance, we start realizing that it has an uplifting effect on our mind, and when our mind is uplifted, it has an effect on how much we smile. So when we do that and we smile and return to the object, what we're doing is we are diffusing the craving. And the same thing happens if you're doing a forgiveness practice, for instance. When you forgive, you're recognizing that your attention is caught up with something with a flavor of I don't like it, right? And you forgive it, you're recognizing that your attention is caught up here and you're letting that thing be. And when you relax your mind, you let go of the tension and tightness in your mind and come back. When you're forgiving, it may not always be easy to smile, so it's not mandatory, but if you can use the smile also on your way back to your object of meditation or whatever activity you're doing. And this is a very important point. This is the foundation for compulsive behavior, right? So like I said, we don't go on a road with the understanding that at the first opportunity we are absolutely going to lose our cool, right? This happens because we are going down a very compulsive slide. It is like sitting down a slide and then gravity takes over. So craving acts like that. So it acts like that gravity. It just, you have these habitual patterns that we'll talk about in more detail in the coming days. It just makes you behave in the same way. When you hear a certain person, you behave in a compulsive behavior, right? So you hear maybe I mean, if you're interested in politics, these days everything is highly polarized. So if you hear something that you from somebody that you don't like, then immediately your compulsive behavior may be to criticize that or to feel irritated, or your mind goes into other things that the person may have said or done. Or if somebody in front of you says that, your compulsive behavior may be to argue with them and prove that they're wrong or get in a shouting match with them, right? So I'm obviously using very extreme examples, but craving is the foundation for compulsive behavior. It acts almost like gravity and sucks you into a certain state of attachment, certain state of taking things personally. In fact, this mechanism is so important that the Buddha used this in his presentation, in the most concise presentation of his teaching. So, the crux of the Buddha's teaching can be presented as the Four Noble Truths, right? So, the Buddha said, uh, in fact, many people would come to the Buddha and say, why don't you perform miracles for us, or why don't you talk about how the universe is eternal or not, and talk more about reincarnation or things like that. And the Buddha would say, I'm teaching one thing and one thing only: understanding, getting to the root of dissatisfaction and getting rid of it, right? And his presentation of the Four Noble Truths is as follows. So this is like the crux of what the Buddha taught. The first thing that he says The first truth is the truth of dukh. Says there is dissatisfaction in life, right? So all of us are aware of it as we talk, are so far, at least in my experience, and I'm pretty confident in your experience, your curve of happiness is not like you started as a happy child and it's been going up exponentially as you get smarter with age, and to the point that it's hardly possible to control your happiness today. So, since we are not on that curve, let's be honest and acknowledge that there is dissatisfaction in life. It doesn't mean life is suffering. That is a translation of a news, and that is incorrect. It means that there is dissatisfaction in life. The second noble truth, and you'll see this a lot about the Buddha in this retreat, as well as if you decide, if you're interested in studying more about what he taught. So the Buddha would often use a root cause analysis way, right? So you take something and see what it is dependent on, right? What is the root cause of something? And the Buddha says the origin or the foundation or the basis for dissatisfaction is craving. So this moment in your life when your consciousness, your experience, your mind space gets obsessed with I like something or I don't like something. A million things are happening around you, and suddenly your attention seeks out one thing and says, I like it, I want it in my life, I won't be happy till it comes in my life. Or I don't like it, I want it away from my life, I won't be happy till this goes away from my life, right? So that can be simple thing like pain, right? So pain comes, you have some kind of a pain, and your mind can get completely attached. Why do I have to feel this pain? Why do I deserve it? Or self blame that if only I had taken better care of this, maybe the pain wouldn't be so bad. Or blaming others, like if somebody had taken better care of me or somebody had helped me, maybe this pain wouldn't have happened. Maybe the doctor didn't do their job well, right? So dissatisfaction is rooted in the moment that we start completely identifying with something and getting into a cycle of I like it or I don't like it. The third is a very obvious next step of the root cause analysis that the Buddha is doing, which he says nirodh, or the end or cessation of craving, of dissatisfaction. And the Buddha says the cessation or end of craving leads to the end of dissatisfaction. The moment you stop taking something personally, somebody honked, it's possibly because that is how they learn to drive. Or it's possible that they're an inconsiderate person. But if I don't have any action to do right now, what is the point of me feeling irritated about this? Right? Just understanding that. Getting out of that, I like it, I don't like it loop. Okay, if you smell the pie, either you go for it or you don't go for it, right? Don't put yourself in a place where you're in turmoil that I want it, but I shouldn't have it, but I still want it, but if I have it, then I'll feel guilty. Get out of that. Right? Take the action that is required. Don't get stuck in a friction with reality. I like how I will be happy if something changes in reality the way I want it, or goes away that I don't want, right? So when once we get stop getting stuck in once we stop getting stuck in that thought process, comes the end of dissatisfaction. And finally, the fourth noble truth is that the Buddha says, okay, this is all great in theory. But the good news is, unlike me, you don't have to do like the Buddha put himself through extreme austerities to reach this understanding of the mind and of the techniques, right? So at one point, he was living on like 1 grain of rice per day, right? So he says, okay, instead of going through that, I'll give a structured system and method to get this. And in this retreat, what we are learning is exactly from the Eightfold Path. So we are using terms that are more accessible, more contemporary, examples that are more accessible, more contemporary, but everything that we are learning is exactly from the Eightfold Path. Without getting into too much detail about this, but the 6 R's, for example, is a part of the Eightfold Path. Mindfulness is a part of the Eightfold Path. Getting collected, being able to stay with the object without our mind running after every distraction, that is a part of the path. Okay, so this is where the origin of this retreat comes from. And the Buddha says, don't worry. Yes, there is dissatisfaction, but if you understand this practice, if you apply yourself to it, you will find that you identify the basis for that dissatisfaction. You will find the way to get to the end of that dissatisfaction, and you will be able to walk the path that leads to that end. Okay, I just take a pause there. Any thoughts, any questions? So I'll just show you a very quick visual to remember every time your mind goes down a rabbit hole, right? So all of us have our favorite rabbit holes that we go down, and our mind can't stop saying that I like it, I want it, I want it. So for example, uh, you want to buy a certain item of clothing or gadget or whatever, right? And your mind keeps getting stuck there until you're able to get it. Maybe it's releasing 3 months from now. Until you're getting it, you're completely uncomfortable, or you don't like something somebody said to you at work or at home, and you can't get over it, right? So just a quick demonstration of what that feels like. So this is actually a kind of story that is used in many ancient Indic spiritual traditions. But so this is a jar that I've got, right? And I've got some, say a tomato or an orange or a mandarin or something inside it, right? And this is, say, a rabbit hole for me. I like it or I don't like it. Now let's use an example of I like it. Contact happens. For some reason, my mind goes towards this, right? Something happened. Okay. So maybe there is a colleague that always annoys you, and because of how they talk to you, right? And somebody mentioned that colleague, or they said something in passing that fell on your ear, right? Your mind goes to this. Your mind says, I don't like it. And it gets gripped with craving around it, right? So your mind grips itself around this. Now, as long as your mind is gripped, you're not going to be able to get your attention away from it. As long as there is craving, as long as this is about I like it or I don't like it. I will be happy only if I get things the way I want it. I'll be happy only if I get the outcome that I want from life. As long as it is about that, your hand is not going to come out, nor are you going to get this. You're just going to be miserable about it. The best strategy in this case would seem to be simply to let go, pull the hand out, then see if you actually have a means to get this out, right? You might have a means to get it out. You might not have the means to get it out, right? So this happens a lot. For example, a lot of people go through loss of loved ones, right? And there is no way to solve for that. But your mind being stuck with the fact that it is that I don't like the way the universe is right now is only going to create suffering for you, and is going to affect the way that you can conduct yourself in a way that is good for you, uplifting for you, or uplifting for the people around you. So, as long as your mind is stuck with craving, craving is that gripping action that is happening with your attention. As long as your attention is caught with craving on something that you like or dislike, you will be uncomfortable. And this may also not lead to a solution. The solution may lie somewhere else, right? So that is something. So every time you get stuck on something, right, you can't shake off the feeling that I'm irritated by what somebody said. Somebody made a judgment about you. I can't get rid of that feeling. I can't shake it off. Remember, you're stuck like that. So either there is some action you can take, and if that action is retaliation, it's not going to change anything either. You'll still feel irritated about what happened, right? So if there is some action that you can take to remedy it, maybe have a conversation with that person, or maybe you simply don't continue to be bothered by that, right? So getting rid of craving will get rid of that discomfort, and the solution will be an effective solution will be there irrespective of whether there is craving or not. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes it's easier to show than tell, right? So just see if you can remind yourself of that imagery anytime you're stuck on something and your mind says, I'll be happy only if the world is in a certain way. not the way it is right now. Great. So that's what I wanted to share about craving. So we are building up, getting closer and closer. Now, what happens after craving? Where it takes us from that point? How do we come to certain thought processes, opinions, judgments? How do we come to certain actions? Right. So that will follow over the coming days. And I just want to suggest, I talked about active meditation earlier today, and I want to reinforce that again, right? So start becoming sensitive to this tightness appearing anytime you're dissatisfied, agitated, frustrated about anything during the day, or you're feeling dissatisfied that something is not happening the way you want it to. Just start identifying the tightness that is there in your mind, and start using the 6 hours to diffuse it. 6 hours, or if you're doing the forgiveness practice, forgive your mind for getting into that place, forgive whatever happened that made you attached with that particular thought process, relax and come back. So start becoming sensitive to this over a period of time. This is what happens. So as soon as your mind starts getting into craving, you understand that there may be a solution to this situation, but it doesn't require me to get all worked up about it and completely caught up in whether I like it or don't like it, and how I cannot be happy unless I get a certain outcome that maybe I depend on the cooperation of the rest of the world to happen. Great. I'll pause there. Any comments, thoughts, anything this set off in your mind, anything you can relate to in your daily life that, now you can see how it is getting colored with craving.
Uh, I have something funny to share.
Go for it.
Right before the live, I was chasing out a tiny mouse from my house. Right before the live, 2 minutes before the live. And I was not able to do that. And so I was stuck at the thought, what would I do if I would not be able to like chase him out, because I cannot stay in the same room or in the same place where he or she is running around and everything. So in that case, like, you know that you have something really important lined up in the near future. How do you get your attention away from something like that?
No, you simply see the actual choice of doing what is best for you, right? It has nothing to do with your irritation about it, right? So your ability to find a solution to that problem, either chase the mouse away or move to the other to another room, or decide to simply put your feet up so that it's not going to come and bite or run over your feet, right? So those are essentially the actions that you have in your mind, right? But your mind gets stuck in why you don't like it, right? Somebody honks at you in traffic, your option is either to approach them and give them very traffic sensitization lesson. If you're motivated to do that, please go ahead and do that, or you can simply let it be and not let it affect the next 10 minutes of your ride, right? So the actions that we have are way simpler and boring compared to how our imagination goes, right? So the kind of stories that are going in our mind about that mouse, what will happen, what if it does this or that, I mean, actions that you have are very few, but you can feel uncomfortable before getting to those actions, or you can simply say that, okay, this is the situation, what is the best that I can do, right?
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's I mean that I chased
It's
him out.
okay. It's a skill, right? You'll need to work towards it. So this is not how we are wired to behave, right? So our behavior is essentially like I mean, we get motivation from I like it or I don't like it. So that is the way we are naturally wired. But what that happens is that means that you'll always be uncomfortable, because as soon as one thing if you manage to manipulate the entire world to be exactly the way you want it for one moment, it's going to change in the next moment, or your attention will go to something else and say, okay, now I want to change this next thing in the world, right? It'll always keep you uncomfortable. So you can let go of it and simply see what needs to be done. That is what is appropriate.
Right.
Excellent. So that's it for today. See you at the morning practice. And yes, keep going. I hope you're having fun with the practice. I hope you feel like you're learning something. Great. Now, the important thing is don't treat this practice as something that is separate from the rest of your life, right? This is the crux of making a transformation to your life. So, it's very important to start seeing these patterns, looking for these patterns, investigating these patterns in your life when they happen at other instances, right? So, just being able to sit in meditation and being able to deal with craving or deal with unwanted distractions is not going to be enough unless you start bringing it into life. It will start becoming more and more natural, but the more curious you are about to investigate these things happening in your life, the faster you'll see these changes happening, and the faster you will see dissatisfaction simply melting away in your life. Wonderful. Have a lovely evening, all of you.